Hey, do you want to learn how to deploy your code in just under a minute without breaking it? Stay tuned and we'll show you how.
Hi, I'm Blair, and this is how you deploy code in less than a minute. So first of all, you want to get a good build on your, this would all be done in CI, but then you want to push your changes to the AWS SAM repository bucket. And then you want to package, and then you want to deploy. So in our case, we should have a good the basically pushing into an S3 bucket, then it's running a CloudFormation process in the background to make sure that the services are set up correctly. Sometimes this could be a little no changes to be deployed into to prove that we can do this with impunity anytime we want. We'll just run the whole step all over again, and I'll prove it. Or we'll run a quick little. There we go. One, two, three. So we're just going to push to an S3 bucket, and then we're going to tell CloudFormation we want to roll. So there we go. Changes are done. It's deploying. And if we do like a small little screen here on the right, you can see here that I have a little hello service that I can just type in. You can test it real quick. Test. So you can see that the first one was Hello Crowd Crushers. And then if we keep testing here, it's just, come on, AWS, do your thing. There we go.
Awesome.
So you can see here that there's another change. So I can push changes at this point to, I can do another one, for example. Let me just, it'll do a cleanup here real quick. But as you can see, we're getting 55 seconds, 35 millisecond latency. We got more or less we could build this out all day, every day. You could have all your methods tucked in here, depending on how you like to build your applications at this point. You could, have it, all your methods tucked into this particular, RESTful interface. You could have several different RESTful interfaces. You could do this in TypeScript. You could do this in Go. You could do this in a whole bunch of different languages. The important thing though is that, and you could also, break it up between branches and staging production. But all of this would be done sort of in your CI process. So you wouldn't necessarily be, having to run all these commands. They would be just, you would commit, it would run it in the background. And then when you're satisfied that you're ready to go to production, you could just do a PR from your dev into your main branch, and then this would be automatically taken up into production. AWS is a little slow today. Hang on. If we go back into CloudFormation, you can kind of see that it's doing a little update cleanup thing. We're over a minute though, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we did get the deployment in. So I think that might not necessarily work. Come on, do a cleanup. Yeah, there we go. So it's completed. So all in, I think about 3 minutes. If we take our latest changes, run API build, package, and then deploy. You can see here this process starts all over again, and then you can see that we're invoking the Lambda, same one that we've been deploying changes to. So you can still see it's in its last state, so it's kind of rolling and doing a rolling update. As it prepares to make the last change, you can see here that it's now progressed into the update. There it is. And that, my friends, is definitely within a minute.
Okay.
So there we go. So what you can do is it depends on your code deploy. It depends on what particular second of the day you're deploying to, but you can expect, the vast majority of your commits would be taken up within 40 to 60 seconds. However, sometimes there's a bit of a small hang where you would end up with like a 2 to 3 minute 2 to 3 minutes of issues. In future, what I would like to see is instead of using I'm using a combination of Terraform to sort of set up my environment the way I want, using the S3 buckets. However, in the future, I'd probably go, and then it uses a lot of CloudFormation to sort of make sure that it's set up the way it wants. However, in the future, I'd probably go 100% Terraform with this, and I think I'd get faster execution off that.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, you could deploy your code in under a minute, but is that advisable? Would you want to do that?
I think in some cases, definitely. When you're whether you're starting a project, if you're doing a greenfield project and you're basically taking out a whole bunch of you're just trying to get tickets crushed out and you're trying to get work done, I think that you need to get the velocity up to a point where you're constantly pushing changes. And incremental changes are much more favored than say like large, huge pushes of code. If you do push a lot of code at the same time, chances are your change surface or the amount of surface that you're changing could negatively impact what you're doing. Plus, you could end up with a lot of teams. I think a lot of software development projects require several different squads doing things in several different ways. So what you want to do is have them all operating on the same code base, making changes often, but at the same time, not necessarily stepping on each other's toes. So that's why I generally favor a monorepo, like a well-built monorepo like NX, some with a lot of tooling around that to sort of tell users okay, well, you're going to make a change here. This is what the impact is. So if you're going to break, if you're going to break something upstream, or then you're sort of responsible for fixing that. But at least you know what you've done before you kind of committed this to in a serious way. The other thing that you're sort of seeing these days, and maybe a couple of different shops or different developers can kind of attest to this, is that you would have something like a monorepo like this, where a bunch of developers are sort of working on various different aspects of it, and you're building out a pretty serious code base. But you want to get those changes into production really fast, but you don't necessarily want to turn them on in time. You don't want to turn them on the minute they're deployed. So you could have a combination of feature toggle to keep your latest and greatest behind the bleeding edge of your software, like behind a set of permission flags that you can turn on at a later date, as versus just pushing code out. So like, I think you can do a lot of these things very like with a high velocity team, but at the same time, not necessarily pushing out breaking things that you can't take back instantaneously. So decoupling the deployment from actually the user experience is sort of, I think, one of the more progressive trends that you're seeing in software development teams or highly productive teams.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So did continuous employment, would it help you in this instance, or would it hinder you?
In this particular case, I think continuous, like a CI/CD pipeline with like GitHub Actions or Circle CI, would definitely enable your team, because then to them it's just a commit. Mm-hmm. Like you just commit. The feedback, the message that they would receive from from the CI is tucked away in the issue. And if you have your Kanban board set up correctly, your commits and your test results are all sort of taken care of on the Jira board. Or maybe not everybody likes Jira. There's several different alternatives to that, but your Kanban board should be containing the feedback for that, so your developers can just focus in on whatever feature they're deploying out or whatever feature they're constructing at that time. Gotcha. So it's a normally, like this again would be tucked away in the CI/CD process, but I think in terms of just this sort of, when you're just getting started on a project, for example, you kind of want to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And this, like I said, like it's a 1, 2, 3 type of thing. So NX will sort of give you the tooling to say, okay, I want to build out my API, or if I got an Angular front end or some sort of React front end, and this is all written in TypeScript, and I have shared libraries, and this complexity is starting to show up. I want to know about things that are affecting one another. NX will give you that sort of view into the system, so you can make intelligent decisions before you commit code. Mm-hmm. That being said, once you've committed, NX goes a little bit further to provide the tooling to help the CI process through to efficiently process out the changes as well. So you could have 3 or 4 front end applications all kind of talking to a series, maybe like 10 or 15 or maybe 20 services in the back end. And they talk to them in various ways with the different authorization levels. And so keeping track of all of the like the sort of relationships between the systems is a big challenge. Mm-hmm. And also, if you have a polyglot team that has maybe a couple of different languages in the shop, you could end up with some of your software written in Java, some of your stuff written in pure Node.js, or maybe some of it's all, maybe it's been moved into something like a Nest.js framework or TypeScript based backend software. Mm-hmm. So what you want to do though is, like, if you can get all your software, if you can get your project all in one place, so from taking your legacy into your greenfield project, or just starting with a pure greenfield project, usually having some sort of monorepo with great tooling sets you up for success to have these like really ultra fast high performance deployment timelines. And again, like the automation in behind usually like bolts right on into your CI pipeline with very little effort. So you can get your everything's tested. Your test reports, coverage reports, your linting, all of this is taken care of during step-by-step process. But when it comes down to it, like, hey, I want to deploy, we're ready to go, just by looking at the branch or some whatever your shop prefers, like you can have it deploy out to certain environments that don't necessarily have there's some firewalling, and you can control the secrets so that you don't have to expose things unnecessarily to your development team.
Got it. And the last question I have for you is, how do you know what you just deployed in under a minute did not break?
Okay, so that's a great question. So if you set up, there's a couple of different ways to do this. One, I'm a huge advocate of writing good tests. So you want to write good unit tests and good integration, or good end-to-end tests for whatever you're building. You should have a good idea of what you're building. Now, is that a silver bullet for anything, for everything? Not necessarily. When something does break, it's important to have good observability inside the systems that are running. That includes logs. So in serverless, you want to have a system, you want to have some extra features built into your Lambdas where the logs are being centralized or shipped and centralized back to somewhere where you can actually look at them. And as also, you want to look at performance monitoring as well. Like, so maybe you're not getting the performance on, maybe everything works well, it's just you're not getting a performant request done. So you need to maybe refactor, but you need to understand that there's a performance issue.
Good.
So observability tools, that you need to understand, maybe building and tracing software, like something like Jaeger, open tracing framework to sort of let you see the life cycle of a request as it passes between various services. You want to have your tooling in place. So you want to have your tools in place that gives you a complete view of what's going on. And that's where an operations team or like a reliability team really needs to spend time to do it right. And that means making sure that they know how much load is on the system, what their guarantees are for that system. Are the services in the back end built to fail elegantly? And I think that kind of comes from building a good relationship between your development group and this sort of a reliability group as well. So there's a couple of different things that can take place that can ruin your day. Lambda is not a cure-all. Like, you have to build Lambda services correctly. But if good observability, and knowing what you've committed to have it, and a plan for when things fail. I think a lot of people make panicky decisions, try to change something. You just want to, first of all, understand what's going on, build a story around how you're going to get out of that mess, and then execute.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for joining us, Blair. It's been really insightful.
And thank you very much. I hope this was beneficial to somebody.
It will be, trust me. Okay, thank you.
Take care. Thank you.